Now, I know full well I'm taking a bit of a risk with this one, recording ahead of Game Week 25 even being over. But without further ado, I love making FPL videos for you lot. So here is players to buy and avoid for Game Week 26. Now, we have to start this video by being cognizant of the upcoming fixtures we've got. 26 is going to be pretty much a single game week for most teams, which I don't think warrants making transfers for. Unless you've got absolute fires to put out in your team, I'd really start to look at the double game weeks we've got coming up, starting with double game week 27. Brighton, Brentford, Crystal Palace and Southampton, 4 teams that double in 27. For me, given that Crystal Palace play Man City and Southampton play Man United as part of their doubles, I think Brighton and Brentford are the 2 teams that you should be targeting. Now, we also have a blank game week coming up in 28. And for me, I've still got my free hit left, and I think 28 is going to be the week that I play it. There's looking like blanks for some very popular teams in fantasy football, like Tottenham, Man City, Brighton, United, even Brentford will likely blank, Liverpool, Fulham, Leicester. All these teams, according to Ben Crellin's fixture tracker, it's based on essentially results coming up in the FA Cup. So if the results you see in the blank if column happen, then these teams are likely to blank. So being cognizant, I've just bigged up Brentford and Brighton. You're going to have to either bench, probably going to bench them in 28. So I like them for 27, obviously bench options for 28. It's going to kind of lead into the players that I'm going to suggest. Game week 29 is set to be a really exciting double game week. Personally, for me, I'm looking to bench boost in 29 based on a wildcard team that I build in 27. We got doubles for Villa, Bournemouth, Brentford, Brighton, Chelsea, Leeds, Leicester, Liverpool, Man United, Newcastle, Forest and West Ham. So again, those 2 teams I mentioned, despite them blanking in 28, they double in 27 and 29. And that's Brentford and Brighton. So yeah, really good fixtures looking like for these teams. And I think this should help you understand the players to target for game week 26, trying to build your team towards these fruitful double game weeks. And then finally, looking even further in the future, again based on FA Cup results, we're looking at 2 games of the FA Cup in the future now, in clashing with when there could potentially be some FA Cup semi-finals. You can see there are 2 fixtures with teams that are more than 50% to blank. So Brighton again, Man City, Man United and Chelsea. So looking towards game week 32, we're likely to get some more blanks. But I think for me, this is probably a bit too far ahead in terms of planning. And again, I think by this time your team will look quite different to what it looks at this stage, I'd imagine. So, but just giving you some early sighting of the blank game week coming up in 32. And obviously, we don't really know what teams are going to blank because it's dependent on 2 games that each of them have to play in the FA Cup. Okay, now we can start getting into the players that I really think you should be looking at buying. And first up is Ivan Toney. He looks like the outstanding captaincy option in game week 27. He plays Everton and Southampton. He's top at the moment for expected points in 27. I know this video is focused on game week 26. He's got Fulham at home in 26, which I think is a fixture he could definitely score in. This FA investigation into his betting shenanigans is just dragging on forever and ever, and I think he's going to be fine to at least get to game week 29, his second of the doubles. He's the 90-minute man for Brentford, their absolute talisman. Takes the penalties. To be honest, I think he's genuinely one of the best penalty takers in the world. I don't think he's missed a single one yet since he's gotten back into the Premier League. And yeah, he's got 0.74 expected returns per 90. I think that's an absolutely elite number and definitely one of the top strikers in the Prem. So for me, I think number 1 on my list personally for 26 is Ivan Toney, getting my team ready for that double game week in 27. Next up, I've gone for Rob Sanchez. Essentially, you know, you've got Brighton and Brentford to pick from in terms of goalkeepers for 27 and 29, and I think Sanchez is a perfectly decent option. He's got some really decent fixtures there. Him and Raya are predicted to get around the same points for the next 3 game weeks. The one thing with Sanchez, he's similar in terms of goals conceded, but he tends to make a few less saves. But for me, if you want to buy him for 27, he's quite simply a set and forget kind of goalkeeper. You can buy him and just leave him in your team. So considering the doubles in 27 and 29, they look like good fixtures, particularly the double in 29, Brentford, Bournemouth and Leeds and Palace in 27. I think those are fixtures that Brighton could keep a clean sheet in each of. So for me, I really like the look of Sanchez for clean sheets in his double game weeks. It wouldn't be a buy and avoid video with Game Week 27 in mind without mentioning David Raya. He's now the top scoring goalkeeper in Fantasy Premier League. With doubles in 27 and 29, I think he's almost impossible to ignore. The guy's averaging almost 5 saves per game, and I think that alone has probably propelled him to where he is in terms of FPL points. Got great fixtures in 27 for clean sheets. I mean, Everton, Southampton look good for, I'd say, Brentford to keep a clean sheet, whereas 29, a bit tougher comparing him to Sanchez. But yeah, similar to Sanchez, obviously the top goal and scoring keeper in FPL at the moment. Try and get my words out there. And for me, again, he's just a set and forget goalkeeper option. So Sanchez and Raya, the two best goalkeepers for 27, and definitely consider bringing them in for 26. Maybe if you've got a bit of cash in the bank and still got Danny Ward sitting on your bench, maybe that could be the transfer you make this game week. It's no real surprise then that this video is going to be filled with Brighton and Brentford players purely because of the double. So essentially what this covers is just my favourite picks from each of the team. And my favourite Brighton defender is Purvis Estupiñán. 4.7 million, the doubles in 27 and 29. And for me, he's my pick of the Brighton defenders. He appears to be the most attacking of them all, bombing forward as often as he possibly can. And he appears to be absolutely nailed. I don't think there's much competition for his position. Yeah, really like him. He is the highest, has the highest predicted points of all defenders for the next 2 game weeks. Obviously, the double in 27 and 26. And for me, he's my number 1 defensive target to look at bringing in for that double in 27. And on the Brentford side of the coin, I've gone a little bit rogue with this one, but I think there's logic behind why I've done it. Ethan Pinnock is my pick of the Brentford defenders. He's got better underlying numbers than Ben Mee, who seems to have been a bit of a cult hero this season for goals. But when you look at the underlying stats, Pinnock is actually ahead of Ben Mee and equal with Rico Henry, the fullback for Brentford. He's nailed to start every game as Pinnock, plays 90 minutes, and he's 0.6 million cheaper than Ben Mee. And when we spoke about the fixtures, doubles in 27 and 29 look like fixtures, apart from maybe the Man United one. Brentford could quite easily keep some clean sheets in. For me, Pinnock is a really good option, and he's 0.6 million cheaper than Ben Mee. And for that reason, I think he's my number 1 defender from Brentford. Okay, next up, I don't think this guy comes as any surprise, but it's Mitoma from Brighton. Again, we know what doubles he's had. I've gone through it multiple times, 27 and 29. And I think for me, he's a genuine captaincy alternative to Tony in game week 27. We know how good he is. We know how well he's been performing this season. He's got 0.43 expected returns per 90. It's certainly not the best of all midfielders, but it's very decent. It's a similar sort of underlying number to, I believe, what Bruno Fernandes is putting up this season. So you can put him in that tier. And I think he's only, well, the best of the Arsenal midfielders, so Saka and Odegaard, sit in and around 0.5. So he's not too far off those guys. And I definitely think if Saka and Odegaard had a double game week, you'd be considering captaining them, which makes me think you should consider captaining Mitoma too. It does seem, though, that the goals came within a bit of a purple patch for him, where he was definitely outperforming his underlying numbers. But for me, they're good enough that you can still expect returns in 27 from 29 in. I just think he's a really exciting FPL prospect, and I think his ownership going into those 2 doubles is going to absolutely skyrocket. So Mitoma, definitely on my watch list. I don't think it's necessarily controversial to say, but I think I actually prefer Solly March to Mitoma as an FPL option. I mean, given that I'm going to play my wildcard in 27, I'm probably going to own both of these players. But for me, March seems to be the better option than the Mitoma. He's playing a new and really attacking role under the new manager. All of his 5 goals this season have come since the new manager has taken charge of Brighton, and he's a top scorer in Brighton mid in FPL. 0.47 expected returns per 90. If you cast your mind back to Mitoma, he's actually doing better, and I would say most of these underlying numbers, improvements if you like, have come since the new manager. So I couldn't find anywhere stats that show Brighton players' expected returns per 90 since the appointment of De Zerbi. That's the kind of stat that I think would show just how much better March is. But I really do think that March's underlying numbers since the new manager has come in have been far and above Mitoma's. So for that reason, I actually think March is a better option for your midfield than Mitoma. And I couldn't call the video buy and avoid without telling you about some players or a player that I think you should avoid. And this week, I've only got one, but it's a team that have absolutely burned me this season, and it's just the Man City defence as a whole. You can't back any one of them to start all the games, and for that reason, I think you should be picking more nailed options from other teams, simply to save you the stress and the hassle, because FPL is meant to be fun, and for me, I don't find it fun praying that my Man City defender starts, checking the lineup and then seeing they don't and just being full of disappointment. For me, you can't trust what Pep says in the press conference, and to be honest, I think just because he's changing his defenders around so much, you can't really back Man City to keep those clean sheets. So for me, Man City defence, I've had enough, and I think I'm going to avoid them for the rest of the season. And that concludes the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you found it useful, please leave a like rating and subscribe to the Golden Goal channel. Feel free to put in the comments any other players you're looking to buy or avoid this game week, and if you disagree with any of my thoughts, I'd be interested to hear your opinions in the comments. Again, like I say in pretty much every video, FPL is all about difference of opinion. If everyone had the same opinion, the game would be boring. So I'm interested to hear your opinions, and I won't be offended if they're different than mine. I'll see you in the next video, everyone. Goodbye.